Episode 17. Actually, I must admit, my shirtless last episode in this story, which is a long story, as you know, if you've followed any episode, which you haven't, which I know, because, well, there's no counts. But anyway, the point is this. Last episode, 16, was a misdirection play. I got my next big things wrong. I was actually describing the next big thing as 16, which actually 16 was the last next big thing. And the last next big thing I decoded was the internet. And what's interestingly about that thing is it was sort of a lie, but it's also the foundation of the future of next big things. And I'll get to 17, 18, eventually 19. But let's get back to that misdirection play, because the internet itself is a misdirection play. What is truth? What is on the internet? The internet is full of more lies than truth. How do we know that? Because truth is not necessarily measured by money, and yet internet prominence of information is measured by money and influenced by money, and, well, advertising is not necessarily truth. In fact, fundamentally, it's often lies. And so that's some of the part of the problem of the paradigm of the current architecture of our internet. Actually, our current architecture of our entire story. We're building a story of caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, but the buyer is us, and we're stealing from us. But that's a bigger part of the long part of the story. But those of you who were around most of you were around the turn of the millennium, when we thought the internet was everything and we measured everything by eyeballs. And what happened? Well, it crashed. Well, these were elusive valuations. You can only measure them in your reality by what you call earnings. And, well, those earnings were gotten by people that advertised like Google and promoted more lies. And I'm not saying they did. They also promoted some very good things and access to information. But all information is not created equal. And that's really part of our story, because this is about the information revolution, about the importance and the priority of all information, and how that ties to the importance of the future of money. Okay, and that is 17, 18. I've described in previous parts of the story. By the way, those of you knew it crashed in 2000. Okay, what happens? Fed comes in, pumps in a lot of money in the United States, goes into the housing market, we pump that up, that crashes, we come back a little bit, and we're sitting on the precipice and we think everything's fine. And why do we think everything's fine? Because it's okay right now, but here's the problem that we have, both from sort of a architecture of futures, politics, how are we going to deal with our economy prospect, which is probably the most important pressing thing in the world, to how do we predict the future of technology and the future impacts to society. We are operating in a reality we have no control of. And, well, we're operating, I mentioned it last time, I think it was, or one of the times in the last stories. Okay, we're operating by looking at our world through the rearview mirror. Now, those of you who don't have a car yet, the rearview mirror you put on the side of your car that drives along so you can see who's behind you. But if you're always guiding because all you can see is what's behind you, you have no forward view. You have no idea what's in the future. You're looking at the rear view and predicting the future. There's no way to get there from there. It's really, well, it's sort of distorted. And what if you could turn it around and turn a forward view upon the future? And that's what next big things 17 and 18 are all about. Now, which comes first? The confluence of convergence of technology or infinite money? 7 was power and light. 1 is monopoly. That's at the top of the pyramid of everything. 1 monopoly of us. But 7 was power and light. 8 was the telephone. But the 8 also represents infinity. So I'm also describing a scenario of infinite money. So, to finance our confluence of convergence, we create infinite money. We must have the confluence to create the money. We ask the money to create the confluence. And that's where it comes to big thing 19. And before I get to 19, I must tell you who I became and what my story became back in 2005. I've been trying to tell you this story, and I've got you I haven't even got you to 2007 because I struggle. My reality itself has gone into a distortion link that could be tied to the madness of the story itself, or my own radioactive mind madness, which I accept too. So this has many levels, but so I can't even go into the real-time story, but the story of us and the future of us is this. I became, let's say, a fictional representation, because I never really want to be this. I still don't. By the way, what are these stories? These are contents for somebody. I've written lots of things that might be construed as part of a book. And also, I've written them in interesting kinds of code. And I've done crazy videos. And, well, I've got stuff in my head that could keep on going for years. But the point is this. As a prophet of profit, what is the prophet of profits? Actually, at first I thought of, hey, I found a path to infinite profits. However, if that path is justice and peace on earth, it's also a path to explain our profits, which we'll get into in a moment or two. And so, as you view this, I don't know if you ever view this, but if you're viewing this, and you're a, movie producer, director, just a person sitting in your room, and you want to say, what if I could build on these concepts? Well, that's what they're here for. They're here for you. They're here for posterity. I care nothing to earn nothing from this other than to do whatever job I may or may not have to advance the ideas within this. Because as stated before, I have self-declared myself, the prophet of prophets. Now, what is a prophet of profit? Okay, so let's say you buy my vision for a future where we merge our entire global enterprise together, and we merge each other and buy each other out and buy out all nations, buy out the indebted nations and cancel out the nations, and basically have one global enterprise with us, with lots of little competing sectors and subsidiaries within them to make sure that we're advancing innovation and learning. Okay, and that is backed with a reserve bank of the entire world, backed by the world's assets. Okay, so imagine all that, and, well, imagine that we can, put in massive investments throughout the world right now, that where people are worrying about securing their retirement, we could actually repair people out in the middle classes of America and Europe and the more developed nations, and make room for the younger, and distribute and change the paradigm of economics throughout the world. And how we change that is up to us together. But here's the thing. There's a lot in the way of our rear view, beyond sort of our view of economics and our view of, well, technology and the future of that. There's a lot in the way. It's just not that easy.
That was easy.
To change the world overnight without changing the thinking, well, of virtually every human on earth. And that becomes somewhat of a challenge. Okay, we know it's a challenge. I mean, look at the Middle East right now. You think it's a challenge just bringing peace to Syria. What about the challenge of bringing peace to the entire Middle East? Having Iran and Israel in love with each other. Well, that's a big challenge. But let's go on to the challenge and let's talk about how this ties into the paradigm of economics. And if I were king, which I would not be king because I'm smarter than that, I would want many, many kings smarter than me, and I would never be king, and I would never be the emperor, but in the privacy of my own home, I might wear no clothes. Anyway, here's the point. The point is this. If you look through our historical record of our religions And see, if you conceive of the concept that there is a path to justice and peace on earth, it can actually tie you to the vision of the Abrahamic religions, which is basically the big three of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, the other part, you see, it's five. And the other part is Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, I don't want to leave out any other isms in the planet. I don't want to leave out any other of the branch of the paradigms. But when we focus on these, we might be able to focus on a historical, future-oriented message for humanity. And as I mentioned, this might be the time where to hear this message because, as I mentioned before, everybody alive, almost except for little children, their birth year was 19-something, right? Oh, tell me if I'm wrong. But anyway, by the way, I'm going to be wrong lots of times. When you say as much stuff, throw it to the wall as me, I'm going to be wrong. But that's okay. Don't accept everything I say as truth. Judge your own. But maybe within some of what I say, you will find kernels of truth, which will reveal the real important truths. So let me get on with this part of the story. So this part of the story goes into this. Okay. The paradigm of the religions is this. Is that if you go through it, by the way, all the religious traditions were originally all. And if you go through, the oldest of the traditions was Hinduism, a many-god religion, but introduced the notion of karma. Now, then we had Judaism, and the religion of Adam and Eve, and Abraham and Moses. And, well, throughout much of the Judaic history or the Judaism Bible, it talked about the history which was war and struggle, which was sort of the history of mankind. Now, here's where it came next. About 600 years before Christ, well, another, what I would argue, great prophet comes along, the Buddha, and he describes a new kind of paradigm of taking karma and adding to it, and he described the five noble truths, and, well, he described a world in which there was no God, in which man was to become God, but man would become God by giving up his earthly being nature. Now, what's interesting then is about 0 BC, because that's how we count from Christ, well, then Jesus Christ came along. Some would argue with him, but we know the story. And then he gave his life for everybody. But there's these missing years, and there's also some missing information, and maybe, just maybe or probably, he went over east and learned about karma and Buddhism and brought back some of the principles to the Judaic religion. They didn't believe him at the time, but he told them to turn the other cheek. He told them, well, you reap what you sow. He told them to be good to your neighbors. He told them, well, that for a rich man to get to heaven, it's like flying a camel through the eye of a needle. Okay, there are informations passed out. Now, if you take this, and then 600 years after that, with 300 years in the middle, well, Constantine came in, and, well, we won't go into the Council of Nicaea, but it might be a part of the beautiful lie. And anyway, then the Prophet Muhammad comes along, and in my interpretation, says that Christ was the Messiah, that the Judaic book, the Torah, was the writing of God. And he said God has no partners, which, let's put that aside. Okay, and one can argue whether he was a great prophet or not. But he's got more than 1 billion followers, and we can't get to justice and peace on earth without reconciling together. But here's the thing, they're all together in a pyramid. It's Hinduism, it's Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, and they're tied to the eye in the pyramid The eye at the top of the pyramid is Christ, and he symbolically gave our lives to show us the only way for salvation is for all humanity to be at the top of our pyramid. That's it. That's it.
That was easy.
If this was not mine, but the blood of Christ, would this not be worth any nation on earth? You tell me.